Hey, everybody, welcome to the True That Show. And could there be a more exciting moment for us? I don't know if you want to say exciting, butterflies in our stomach, the whoo, how is this going to happen? And what's it going to, all of our experience with doing past events is going to like come to the forefront. But the amazing thing is that it is about everything to do with what we do, right? I mean, Caroline, if you don't know, Caroline and I have not only created this amazing podcast that we're so proud of, and we hope that you guys get so much joy and nuggets, because that's really how it works, right? Layering this information, layering inspiration and motivation, and listening to these people that kind of go all in. And we aspire to be like the people that we interview, right? I mean, that's what makes it fun for us on this end. And Carolyn and I have, joined forces once again to produce and co-publish an amazing book that is the beginning of a series of books that is going to do exactly that. And we have not left any rock unturned. Women, couples, men, and it's the same, but so very different and so exciting for us. Tomorrow is the launch of the first book that we have produced together, or personally that I have produced myself at all. And I don't know if Caroline's got any books in her closet that I haven't heard about, but I'm sure she'll talk and share about that. Caroline, how are you feeling about tomorrow night's book launch?
Amazing. Excited. And no, I have a lot of things in my closet, but not a book. Not a book. So, yes, that's going to be a series about how to get away with murder. No, not true, people. Wrong channel. No, it's actually a book about the industry that we're in. And I will let Debs, tell you the story a bit about how it came to be, because you will be just as surprised as I was when I heard about it. Deborah is an amazing business partner, you know, but sometimes she doesn't share stuff until it's time to share stuff. So sometimes I find out things at the same time as everyone else, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But I need to give her credit, because since we met, which is about 5 years ago now. Wow, time flies, eh? We met on a marketing tour in Australia. That's a whole other story that we told in another podcast. But basically, we met because we shared 11 flights, 13 hotels, a lot of different events, a lot of different presentations, and mainly the same bedroom for 4.5 weeks. And there's one thing I can tell you is that after that journey, you become best friends or you never talk to each other again. So we ended up becoming best friends, and we were also with four other women. So it was very, very interesting. We learned a lot about our industry and also about humankind. So, but with this being said, we really connected very fast. We have the same values. Like, I would say we're polar opposites in life, but our core values are very similar. And Deb has always pushed me to do the next thing, the next level, the next, you know, everyone in their life at some point will say, "Oh, I should write a book about my life." Um, I know I heard it so many times, but no one is actually serious about that. It's just an expression, or, "Oh, yeah, we should do a podcast about that." That too is quite often just an expression. Well, back in the days, it used to be like, "Hey, we should have a radio show on that." But it's still only expressions. But with her, it's not. It's not. When she says thing, it's like very literal. It's like, okay. And anyway, I've learned to take her very literal because a lot of different projects got created, and I'm actually thankful, because for the longest time she was like, "Hey, we should do conferences together," and blah blah. And I was just like, "No, thank you." And all of this led to a podcast and now a new book. And honestly, I never thought I would co-author a book, but with a little bit of convincing, very little. because I jumped in with both feet in the project, but I wasn't sure if I was to be a co-author in that book. So I will stop talking and let her tell how the book came to be and how she announced it to me.
Well, thank you very much. And that's the great thing when you meet people, you don't know what you don't know. And one of the things that I love about Caroline is that she loves that part of my personality. That's that kind of, we would say in Ayurveda, the vata, that very creative. And then Caroline comes in, not with the realism, but being able to break that out. So, you guys all know that producing a book or a podcast or building a business is well beyond past the creative idea, right? It takes a lot of pieces in that cog to make the cog roll to go to the next cog. And so that's where I think we really do well together. And hopefully you get that. And we don't say no to each other very often. And I think that that's a really great thing because we both have the same philosophy. Now, she heard it through someone that she loves dearly, and that's Jeff Olson. And I heard it through Richard Branson, right? And it's like, just say yes and figure it out later. And I think we have that agreement with each other. Like, yesterday I got a text from her going, hey, this might be a great idea with a circle on it. And it has something to do with doing audiobooks. I was like, oh, I guess I don't get to say no. So once you start saying yes, you can't start to say no because, then creativity dies. But anyways, long story short, I always felt like I had a book in me. And so I just was, I had a book that I was almost finished with someone, but I was working with someone and unfortunately, they passed over. So the book came to a standstill. And then I was talking to another person in our industry in direct sales. And we were talking about the difference between what it's like for a man and what for a woman. And we were talking about doing some things together. And then, COVID hit and that changed the formula of that book, which it wasn't going to be able to be as interesting for certain reasons. And so there's always kind of been this book thing. And I thought, well, let's just start researching it because before something happens, if you've been in business long enough, you might want to do some background check, you know what I mean? And so I started researching publishers for this book that I thought I was going to produce over here. And that's the great thing about life. Sometimes you think you're going to do this and the universe is like, nope, you're doing this. But you think you're doing this, you're going towards this direction. And then sometimes you don't want to go over there and life just creates a scenario that happens. And that was very true for this situation. Anyways, I'm researching. And I actually literally came up with a different publisher. I was like, oh, this publisher here would be, a different publisher than we were with. This publisher, I think, would be really good for this book. And it was about aromatherapy. It didn't have anything to do with this industry. And it was about aromatherapy. I'm like, oh, this publisher would be really good for that book. And so one of the publishers that I was researching called me on an impromptu day, no meeting scheduled, which if you know our lives, we're kind of scheduled. I have one on a whiteboard right there that tells me, I'm like, what am I doing today? Oh, that's what I'm doing today. Okay. So she just called impromptu and out of her mouth, she's like, hey, how are you? I'm like, fine, how are you? And in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to be using her services, but hey, how's it going? And she's like, I think you should do an anthology. I'm starting to do anthologies. And I was like, okay, explain to me what an anthology is, right? Because I thought I knew. And without looking, stupid, I didn't make sure that I sounded stupid. I'm like, do you want to explain that to me? And she's like, she's a very successful publisher and she's got magazines and she puts books on there. She's like, I'm doing this for fun. Well, that was really attractive to me. I think fun's always attractive to an entrepreneur. It's like, ooh, silver bubble. And we started talking about the power of, 20 people doing a topic, and we started to just, started to kind of bang back and forth what that topic would be. But I love collectives. I love power in numbers. I love aligning together. And I had been asked to be in anthologies, and Caroline knows because being the brilliant woman she is, I run my ideas past her. I'm like, hey, I got invited into this. And it just wasn't coming up as a yes. It just didn't seem powerful enough. So anyways, after a conversation with this publisher about doing an anthology, really doing it around empowerment, entrepreneurship, and then one of my favorite topics, which is women, because I've had the experience, right? I've had the experience of being a woman entrepreneur and what that journey's been like. And so anyways, apparently I briefed Caroline and, ooh, there's this idea. I got this call. This is kind of cool. There wasn't like a solid, she was like, oh yeah, yep, just like you're doing this now. Like it was just very peripheral.
I also want to say one thing that I just had a flash. You also told me, oh, I gave your number to this girl. She's going to call you and she's going to explain it to you because you know
Yes.
what? She just explained it to me. So schedule a call with her. And I read my text and I was just like, yeah, sure. Next month, maybe. And
Yeah.
but this lady is she's really good and she's on track with her schedule. So she made me schedule a call. But that's how I actually had the full, the full picture of the project, not because of you, Deb, because
No.
she explained it to me.
And that is a great example of, allowing the professional to do, if that's the perfect third party call. That's the perfect third. I was so inspired and motivated, but it took, I didn't want to explain that half an hour to her. So anyways, long story short, we were on a podcast. We have a podcast, and we were on a podcast getting interviewed by this great financial guru. And he's like, oh my gosh, you guys, this podcast is so amazing. And out of his mouth, before we had had an agreement or whatever, he said, so what's next for you ladies? And we're like, well, I won't say we. I said, a book. And Caroline's like, yeah, we're doing a book, And so that's where that got negotiated. And what a journey. I'm going to say, as much as I was excited, as much as I was inspired, I had no idea it would be this good. I had no idea it would be this much learning. I had no idea that sitting in a circle on a Zoom with 20 elevated, non-competitive, heart-centered, let's rock this world of entrepreneurship, specifically in our industry. I'll tell you, when we first came off that first Zoom, I felt not just elevated, but I felt proud of myself. And I got to tell you, it's not that I'm not proud of myself. I just don't get that feeling a lot. I don't like, ooh, I felt like I had contributed to the movement of women in business by just being part of and creating the platform and holding that space, which holding space for that amount of powerful women takes a lot of energy, right? You come off, you're like, whoa, I need to refuel. So we're super excited. I'm sure Caroline's going to have a few words here to say what it was like for her, but I can't be more proud. And I hope that we both take time. I've been telling myself, Deb, take time after this weekend to do something for yourself that says, hey, you've really opened the door to something really fantastic. And I can't even, we're going to be ever so grateful for this first group of entrepreneurs that allowed this series to happen. So I'm throwing it over to you, girl.
Yeah, well, actually, I still remember that first meeting, and we had only 3 meetings total.
Mm-hmm.
But I get the same feeling every single time. And I want to say these are women that are, some of them are multi-million dollar earner, a lot are six-figure earners, seven-figure earners. I mean, it's all people who had recognition, awards, titles. And when we sat at that first meeting, we were just like a group of kids in school starting our first day and being like, yeah, we were owning our space with like, yeah, my name is Carolyn and I'm happy to be here. Like it was all the little the shyness of when you're not sure if you belong in there and you completely enter a new world. So that was absolutely amazing. And instantly, all of these women got to where they are because of a huge part of self development. And I say it quite often in this business, you cannot grow your business bigger than yourself. So if you want to grow big in this business, you need to grow yourself. You need to do a lot of personal development. So sitting there with 19 other women who really are like minded, who are, in touch with themselves, who are able to be vulnerable, who are super intelligent, who are super successful. And we all have our different definition of success. For me, it's not necessarily just about the money. Success is a huge part for me is being able to be yourself and stop having to pretend or be whatever people want you to be. Just be you and be it proud. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, it was so amazing to sit with them, and instantly it went very honest, raw, true, vulnerable. I wish we could air our first Zoom because all of the authors, the common theme was like, and by the way, our first meeting was after all of the chapters were submitted. Um, and I'll touch base on that after the why. But basically, you know, there's some women in there, well, most of them, like I'm in awe. It's almost starstruck. I'm like, wow. And to hear them explain the same feeling I had when I wrote my chapter was incredible. We all
Mhm.
went through a journey back in time, basically, of having to relive how we got through that journey, our challenges, how we overcame them, and basically how we built ourselves. So it was an introspective journey. It was amazing. It is in the book. As of now, I'm the only one who read the whole book because I had to. But I also enjoyed it. Honestly, it's a book that I wrote in a flash because I also got to know all of these women, and it's so good. It's so good, and there's tell-alls in there, so every single author gives you her secrets to her success. You don't get that in a lot of places. And honestly, it's amazing for someone in network marketing, but it's also just tools for success. And, I had a great coach that I did a session with not too long ago, and it was a 60-day session. And basically, he said at first, I'm not teaching you how to do your business or whatever. I'll teach you one thing, how to be successful. Because if you can learn this, you can apply it in everything through your whole life in any kind of project, business, jobs, whatever. So I feel like these are the kind of tips that you will go get in that book. It's tips to how to be successful. So whatever industry you're in. And the other thing that I wanted to touch base on, because Deborah is a very intense person, but on this one, I was almost more intense than her because when I jumped in the project, which was what, probably first or second week of September.
It's been a whirlwind.
Yeah, at first Deb is like, yeah, let's publish it for Christmas. We can give it as a Christmas gift. And me as a green newbie, I'm like, yeah. Not thinking, you need to produce it, publish it, print it, deliver it. And anyway, but guys, it's coming out tomorrow, January 22nd. So we did that in a short time. We gave all of our energy. So the reason why our first meeting was when all of the chapters were submitted, that's because the whole process was about just 3 months. But it's, I know there's other amazing projects coming, um, but that was probably the greatest to date. So thank you, Deb, for pushing a little.
Oh, well, that's okay because I said that date, and then if you notice, I pulled it back and I'm like, no, 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 no. And you're like, oh yes, 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 yes. And I'm like, in my head, I was like, oh man, are you sure? Right? I had a sense of what it would take, but honestly, I wanted to move it at that point to Easter, and you were like holding us to our original, like you kept our toes in the fire. And so really, thank you that we're doing this tomorrow. And what an incredible thing. And I think really one of the things that was the most powerful in that meeting was when Anouk, who spoke first, got transparent and real quick. And at that moment, none of our incomes mattered. None of our incomes mattered. And you heard multimillionaires talk about, wow, what was it like to own the word powerful? 20 powerful women and everything that we went through. And though that's just life, right? This book is good for life. It's good to give to, and it doesn't even matter the fact that women wrote it. Yes, women wrote it and women are going to be inspired by it. But if you work with women, if you have a daughter, if you have a mother, if you have a wife, if you have a what have you, particularly if they're sparky, if they're creative, if they're living out of the box, if they're thinking out of there, read the book, do yourself a favor. You'll be a better parent, a better, person in their life to help with that. And I'm not saying that to sell books. I'm saying we talk often of being understood. We talk often, everybody wants to be understood. And these women don't just do this for work. It's who they are. It's who they are.
And you know what? There's one thing, Deb, you did not read the chapters, but there's one thing that I've really found a common thread is the ones who spoke from their youth, you know, who spoke about their childhood. Some had it in them like at 5 to find out like, hey, how can I make something? And I was describing it as entrepreneurship, but you describe it so well. It's being creative. And, you know, I'm going to say one very short story here. And I can't believe I'm sharing that publicly, but there's one thing that I regret so much with my son. My son was my firstborn, so I was trying to have everything perfect in his life. You know, you're like, he's never going to get bullied. So, you know, like let's say, oh, mom, I want to put a purple top and blue pants and yellow shoes. No, not because I don't want him to be himself, but I would be like in my mind, I don't want him to get made fun of and blah, blah. So I was trying to always shelter him. So when he was in first year of high school, I believe, he was making wallets with duct tape. And I know it sounds silly, but the wallets actually look like cute wallets, and it was all gray and duct taped. And he's like, can you buy me more duct tape? I bought him one more roll. And then he came back a few days after. He's like, can you buy more? I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm going to sell them. In my mother's heart, I was just like, I don't want him to go and be heartbroken by, you know, producing 5 wallets and putting all his time and efforts and hope, and they will laugh at him. And I was just like, you know what? I don't think it's that great of an idea. And I did it nicely and as lovingly as I could, but I discouraged him from doing that. Fast forward a few years later, there's this lady that lives on my street. She's like super high class and all there, and we all know that they're the millionaire on the street. And we're talking, it happened that my son and her son were in the same hockey team, so we became friends. And she's like, yeah, my son, he was so funny, like in his second year of high school, so a bit older than my son. She's like, he kept asking me to buy duct tape rolls. And he was making those wallets. And at first he was selling them $5 each. And then he upped this price to $10 each. And I was just like sinking, sinking, sinking. She's like, he made a side business. And she's like, I thought it was funny, but he probably sold 50 of those wallets. And that was my first lesson. Of by trying to shelter, I actually removed, you know, I took away an opportunity for my son to be creative and to actually experience something. And what I read in the chapters of the ones that actually were not stopped in their track is growth after. So as a parent, you can also learn, you know, when your kid want to have a lemonade stand, let them be. When they want to sell their Barbies and make a little profit on it, let them be. When they want to do duct tape wallets, buy the duct tape.
That's a great name to a book, by the duct tape. And, you know, thank you for being transparent. And I think that's really one of the things that we found out by being on those calls. And when you read this book, is you're just going to see that transparency, and it's a different time and generation. And I believe that you as a parent at that time, you know, we're caught between two worlds many times. How far out there can I go before people start to say it's not okay? And it's the dance that we go within our head. Like, how much of an entrepreneur is it okay to be? How big is it okay to shine? Is it okay to say that I don't know? We talked about that earlier with doctors, right? Like, you never hear a doctor say, oh, I don't know. You know, yet we blame them for not knowing everything, but we don't allow them to not know. You know, there's all sorts of things on both sides. So thank you, first of all, for sharing. And two, it's an evolution, right? That's how we learn. That's how parents learn. That's how we learn. That's how, you know, because Nico could have turned around and went and bought duct tape and did it behind your back and failed or succeeded. We don't know, right? But it is that spark and that fire that you're going to see. And It's not all like this. So without giving the book away, I think we'll wrap this up and just tell you that we are so excited and we want you to be on that launch with us tomorrow. We want you to just make that time to come on there and pop on there. We would absolutely love to ask for you to support the authors that poured their heart into this. There's an ebook that you can purchase. There's a soft cover book that you can purchase. Read it and pass it on. Read it and pass it on. Tell people where to get this book. We really feel that this book is going to be a piece of business and personal development that's going to just that's timeless. It's timeless, right? So Caroline, maybe tell them where they can pick that book up and see us on the launch tomorrow.
Yes, so you can go to Amazon. Actually, if you go to Amazon and you Google 20 powerful women in network marketing, the book will come up because we are the only book called that called like that. And the cover is all black, white, and pink. So you can find it that way. We will drop the link with the podcast about our speakers page if you want to come and meet the authors. The authors each made a video of themselves. And I will also include the Facebook group. But if you go on Facebook, it's a public group. You can find it. It's called True Media. So that's our group basically for all of our publications, because you heard it right. I did put an S intentionally at the end because that's the first of many. But basically, if you go on that group, the launch will be live streamed there. So come and join the group, and thank you for being here again this week with us. We really, really, really appreciate you, and we'll see you next week. And honestly, the month of February will be absolutely amazing. We have so many great speakers, so many that we actually added some each week. So it's not only going to be one podcast a week, it's going to be 2 podcasts a week. There you go. We're already growing.
All right. Thank you, Caroline, for everything. This is such a pleasure. We'll see you tomorrow night.
Yes.
All dressed up.
Awesome.